writers, game masters, and creatives to the World Builders Tavern. Today we are talking about the YA romantasy Heartless Hunter, which we are very excited about because we are lucky enough to have special guest Kristen Ciccarelli, the author of the book, with us here today. So we cannot wait to jump in with the author. I will say quickly that normally this is a spoiler-full podcast, but seeing as this book was only released yesterday, that doesn't seem quite fair to our listeners. So we are going to attempt to be as spoiler-free as possible. With that said, grab an ale and pull up a chair. I'm Emma, your friendly barkeep, along with Christiana.
Hi.
Unfortunately, Allie is not able to join us today, but that's all right because we have special guest, author of Heartless Hunter, Kristen Ciccarelli, here with us. Welcome, Kristen. Would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Okay, so I wrote Heartless Hunter, which the quick pitch is that it is a romantic Scarlet Pimpernel inspired fantasy about a witch and a witch hunter. And I'm also the author of the Ascari series and Edgewood. Yeah.
Amazing. So this was the first book of yours that I had read. I know that Allison has read your other series, and she was loved it. She wanted us to pass along that she's a big fan, and she was very sad that she couldn't join us.
Thank you.
But yeah, so this was my first introduction to your writing, and I believe Christiana as well. Was this the first one that you had read? Yeah. So.
Cool.
Very fun to jump in there. And yeah, the premise I think we all loved, witches and witch hunters, is definitely something that we're all very into. And before we get to talking about the world building, because I know that we both have stuff we want to talk about because there is blood magic in this book, which is endlessly fascinating. But I'd like to ask you, Kristen, about your world building process. What comes first for you typically, or with this book specifically? Do you come up with the world first and then kind of write a story within it? Or is the story the first thing that pops into your mind and you build out from there? A mix of the two?
Yeah. It's such a tough question. I feel like it depends on the book, but I feel like I get like a kind of like a snapshot of the world, or like it's either like the magic or the setting, or like I get like bits and pieces of the world that are kind of the initial spark of a story, and then it kind of simmers for a while. But I think the thing that I start with most is like character. And so like a character, who they are at the very beginning of the book, who they're going to be at the very end of the book, and why, basically, and then kind of fit those pieces all together.
So
I guess
who was the character for this book? That's my follow-up.
Yeah, it would have been Rune.
Okay.
And then but I mean, because so basically I knew that I wanted to write a book. It's not a direct retelling of the Scarlet Pimpernel, but it's very much inspired by the Scarlet Pimpernel. So in that book, it's like the Pimpernel and Marguerite and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name. But the villain. So I knew that I wanted the villain and the hero, like those two kind of archetypes from that story. So Gideon was still there, but he did come second. Rune came first.
Oh, that's very cool. And then how did you come up with the magic system? Was it originally, when you first thought of Rune, was she a witch in your mind, or was she just kind of like magic user, or how did that all come to be?
Yeah, she wasn't, I didn't have witch, like that sort of, I definitely had the magic system. I liked the idea of magic users, so like blood magic, and like magic users using like scars, like so having to scar themselves in order to get access to their magic, but then also like displaying those scars like prominently on their bodies as like like status symbols kind of. So that came first, and then I was like, okay, what kind of magic user is this? And then I eventually decided on witches. So yeah,
that's very cool. Yeah, the sort of scarification art, and talking about how witches would like, when they had to cut themselves to get magic, that they would like do these like elegant designs and like patterns, was really cool. Yeah, I really like that as a world building thing, because it makes sense. Like, if you can do if you have this power, what's more intimidating than seeing someone covered in scars? And I think like the blood magic system is super interesting. Blood magic is always really cool, and it's so often just an evil thing. Like it's like, oh, you shouldn't do blood magic. Whereas in this, it was much more of just that's how magic is, and then you can do it for good or you can do it for evil. Did you ever have the impulse to make it just a purely evil thing, or from the beginning were you thinking, no, this is going to be something that's more a tool?
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why, it was never just a purely evil thing. it's like any sort of tool, I guess. It can be used for harm or for good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the one thing that I always find in like blood magic systems is like just skipping over people who experience menstruation. Where
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yes.
you're forgetting a very obvious
Yeah.
source kind of thing. And I really enjoyed the inclusion of that. Like I thought, I'm like, that's so
Thank you.
realistic, even in a like a fantasy world where things are a little bit out of the norm and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah,
obviously blood magic isn't quite a thing in our universe
yeah.
yet, if I have any say. But I really enjoyed that, like the very thoughtful inclusion of that, because I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I would do if I don't want to scar myself, if I don't want to be like visually obvious with it.
Yeah.
Once a month I have a supply kind of thing. And
Yes,
like
yes.
normally that's a loophole most authors kind of forget in that instance.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that.
And it's also kind of nice too because it gives you like a really hard limit because it's like, okay, yes, you
Mm.
can use your period blood, but it has like you can only use it for like the most basic of basic spells.
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
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 And difference, the differentiation between like whether it's taken willingly or not, that too
Mm.
I thought was like asking permission. If you're using someone else's blood, you need permission or it could backfire
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. That I also thought was super cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved the being able to use menstrual blood because that is a big plot hole in a lot of like
Yeah.
blood relate or even like vampire stories and stuff. Here I was like, well, how does this work?
Yeah.
What do you think? Why isn't this explored more? Is it just like that people think it's like? Is it that it's gross? It's like, oh, we don't want to talk about that, or like, what? Do you have any insight as to why that might be?
It could be that. It could be that it's gross. Honestly, I never even like it wasn't even it was just kind of like a natural impulse to be like I never thought it's like, oh, I'm gonna like normalize periods with this. Or that was just kind of like secondary.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, of course,
Yeah.
Yeah.
she would do this.
Yeah.
But I think because it is like traditionally like shameful, so it's like not talked about. It's like you yeah. I wonder if that maybe it's because it's gross, but maybe it's just because it's like invisible. Like we want it to be invisible
Yeah.
Yeah.
as a society.
Yeah. And also, I mean, like, this isn't accurate, but there's also a perception of a lot of, fantasy and sci-fi as being a very, like, male-dominated,
Yeah.
like, genres. And, like,
Yeah.
by readers, that's not necessarily the case, but writers, a lot of it is still, like, men. A lot of it, the like, big works are by male authors. And so that's also maybe a thing of, like, men wouldn't think about that necessarily, a cis man's not going to be like, oh, I have a ready source of blood every month, whereas to like, someone who menstruates is like, obviously this is like, how could you not think about this?
Every month.
Yeah.
Is a reminder.
Yeah. Did you get any sort of pushback from that, like either from an editor or a publisher or a beta readers? Like, was there anybody who was like, this is weird, or was that like just accepted?
No. I did get pushback on the scarring though, because there was like a normalization. The fear was that it was like a normalization or a glorification of like of cutting, basically.
Like
so that, I did get
yeah.
So that was the only thing.
In
the well, at all really.
Yeah. Did you have to change anything of the scarification because of that, or was there just a discussion of like, this will probably be okay?
Yeah, we got like a sensitivity reader, and I did like soften a few places, but yeah, so it did not really, really, yeah.
Yeah.
We love sensitivity readers. We talk about it all the time, how like important it is to get sensitivity readers for that, for like anything like that could be sensitive. So that's
of course.
awesome.
You just don't. There's things that you don't think about just naturally. Biases that you have that you don't realize.
Yeah. Was that the only thing you needed sensitivity readers for? Did you have other things in the book that you looked at specifically?
Yeah, that, and well, my publisher has like a policy, I guess they would say. For anything with blood magic, they give it to a Jewish sensitivity reader. Because there's like the whole blood libel stereotype. And yeah, so anyway, so it was also that was actually the more, that was the thing that was the more I guess not concerned. It was just kind of like, this is because it's blood magic, we need to send it to
That's interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
actually. I'm not Jewish, so I'm not
Yeah,
particularly
I'm not either.
familiar with that. So that's super interesting, actually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that, which is why it's great that there are people
Yeah.
who
Yeah, exactly.
one of the reasons why you need sensitivity readers, because
Yes.
those gaps in your knowledge you never know until someone points it out to you. It's like, did you
Yeah.
consider this? um, so I know Ali had wanted to talk about YA specifically, and kind of the fact that romantasy isn't always her genre, and so sometimes when things are not her genre, she finds them difficult to read. But she found this like really easy to get through and to read it, and she really enjoyed it. And she was wondering if part of that was because it was like a YA book, which tend to be easier to read and like kind of pull you along through the story. Do you have any? I guess so. My question for you would be like, do you find that that's with YA? Is that a thing that you're conscious of when you're writing YA? How did you come to write YA? Was that like a specific thing you always knew you wanted to write, or was that a thing you fell into?
Also, is it YA? I
Hmm?
feel like it's another challenge that
it's
I would
yeah, it's
put
true. It's marketed
forward.
as such, but
Marketed
was
as
it written as
YA,
such?
but
Yeah.
There was a Goodreads review where it's like, this is YA written for adults. I was like, well, that's fair. Okay, so first of all, thank you, Ali, for reading it and liking it despite not liking fantasy. Okay, so the question was, how did I get into YA? And there was a second part of the question?
Yeah, so just kind of what are your considerations when you're writing YA, or if you're writing YA? Like, do you think of what you're writing as YA, and then how did you kind of get into that genre?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think I have. Yeah, so I came to fantasy. I mean, through adult fantasy, like so The Hobbit and The Golden Compass, and all the. Although The Golden Compass was kind of marketed to children, even though I think it's an adult book.
yeah.
But I came so there was a lot of, but there was like kind of like just the beginnings, like when I was growing up and like looking at like in the bookstore and at the library. There was the beginnings of like a YA fantasy, so like Sabriel. What are some of the other ones? That was a big one for me. The Queen's Thief series. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Sorry, but like it was kind of. I came to fantasy through both adult and YA, and I think I latched on more to YA because you do tend to get more female authors in YA fantasy,
Yeah.
and like complex female characters in YA fantasy, or at least back at the back in the day.
Yeah.
That and I think that's kind of what really pulled me more towards YA. And so then when and I was writing, and then I just kind of, that was where my voice kind of landed, and like the kinds of themes that I wanted to explore were all more like YA themes, like coming of age and who are you, how do you, well, I mean, this is maybe a lifelong question, but like what do you do with like your trauma, like how do you move through that to become like the person that you're meant to be, or that you could be. Those kinds of questions I'm interested in, and obviously those aren't just teen questions, but they find a home in YA books, I think.
Yeah.
Easily. And yeah, and so, and actually, so and then so I've just been, that's where I landed. Like I feel like the themes and my voice, like my writing voice, tend to be skew YA. And I actually, Edgewood, which is the book I wrote before Heartless Hunter, I wrote it as an adult, and my editor acquired it, and she's like, you have to age this down because it's going to be YA. I was like, no, I'm like trying to like branch out, but and so anyways, yeah. So I think it's just kind of like my natural spot. Yeah, if that is an answer.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And it's probably a lot easier to write given that that's your natural kind of voice, and you're not having to like consciously think all the time of like, oh, how would a young person, say this, or.
But I do, okay, so like Heartless Hunter, so Ali liked this book, even though she finds it hard to read fantasy. I do think this Heartless Hunter, like the setting, and maybe even the story is a little less. It's obviously fantasy, but I do understand why it would appeal to somebody who doesn't like fantasy or can't get through a fantasy book, because it
Ali,
is kind of like.
I'll quickly say, Ali is the biggest fantasy freak.
Oh, okay.
In the entire
Yeah, sorry,
world.
it was the romance. Sorry, that might have been my mistake.
It's just the romance.
Usually the romance is not her thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
But
so she found the romance like a lot more approachable, I guess.
Yeah,
she,
probably
like,
because it was a fantasy.
Yeah,
setting.
because she's into more like high fantasy kind of
Okay.
stuff.
Oh, okay.
So
So fascinating. Okay.
yeah,
Because that's normally my jam is high fantasy. Although
Mm.
Edgewood was
yeah,
contemporary, I guess. But
How did you come up with the setting for? I know Christiana, you had some thoughts about like
yeah.
the kind of setting and the technology, right?
I have thoughts and praises. So I really enjoyed this book in many ways. And one of the ways I really enjoyed it was that there tends to be in fantasy this kind of like hard line where it's like either purely medieval or contemporary fantasy. There's no in between, right? It's either swords and dragons and letters, or y- it- there's a secret world in New York or whatever kind of thing.
totally.
Always New York.
This this kind of it's always New York. It's always New York. This kind of blended it a little bit where it's like, no, it's like there's not cars, but there are carriages. There's not cell phones, but there's telegrams. Like it felt like a very specific place and time that you don't necessarily see a lot in fantasy in this kind of like niche, like I don't want to say Victorian because I feel like it's like a little bit post-Victorian. And same with
Yeah.
like the fashion and the design and the way you're discussing the I'm imagining the dresses that Gideon sewed and everything, and like the design, it feels a little bit closer to modern than
Yeah.
some fantasy, and I
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad because
So
I really liked writing that.
yeah, how did you land on that? Because I feel like it worked perfectly, right? Where it's there's a scene where Rune wants to send a telegram to Gideon, or to someone, and is like, oh, but will it be intercepted or not, kind of thing. Like I was like, oh, immediately that's an element you don't always see in fantasy, like this kind of idea of like espionage and interception and all these things, and like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so how did you land on that level of technology?
Yeah. So, okay. So again, it kind of goes back to it being inspired by the Scarlet Pimpernel, which is happening, like just after the French Revolution.
Yeah,
So, and then it's like I took a lot of liberties. So it's like it's
yeah,
kind of like Bridgerton era, so Victorian era with
yeah,
like Downton Abbey area almost, like it's like there's like
yeah.
Yeah.
not quite but like somewhere in there, and I kind of just like steal things, and it's like maybe it's a little too early for that, maybe it's a little too late for that, but like I just kind of
It's
I
fantasy,
like
it's fine.
fudged it a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, so I
That's
just
yeah.
yeah.
That's funny because I literally said, I was like, this book is like, what if Bridgerton had witches?
Yeah, totally.
Was my summary of it, where I was like, because there's like that, who is the one getting this information? Who's the person doing this thing? Which is like, I've only watched a little bit of Bridgerton, but I know like one of the kind of mysteries of it is who's writing those gossip letters or whatever.
Yes, yes.
Um, and it felt kind of like that, but with witches, like, and like the whole like taking a ribbon, who has the last ribbon to dance and things like that and
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and it was really cool. It was a very cool blend.
One of my favorite, like, I wouldn't call it a review, but like one of my favorite descriptions, I guess, from someone was it's Bridgerton with stakes, which I feel is unfair.
Yes,
I love Bridgerton.
yes, okay, yeah.
It's like, yeah, so there is that element of like a Victorian, yeah, times
Yeah.
and problems, but
How much research do you do for that? Are you somebody who does like a lot of research into the time period and then kind of pulls from that? Or do you research kind of as you're like, oh, I don't know what kind of fabric this was, let me look it up? Or what's your process for doing that?
a little bit of both. Like I typically know, like, so okay, book 2. I don't think this is a spoiler. There's like a train scene in book 2, and there's a steamship scene in book 2,
Ooh.
and I knew I wanted that, so I knew like I had to like set it in a certain time, if like even though it's like a made up world.
Yeah.
And then I did a little bit of preliminary research just to make sure that it wasn't like totally what I wanted to do wasn't totally out there, not going to be possible. But then when I actually came time to write that scene, it's like, okay, then I like did like more of the deep dive. Or sometimes I'll just, and if it's just like little details, sometimes I'll write the scene not knowing what the details are, and then I'll go back, do the research, and then I'll like insert it and like maybe tweak the scene a little bit. Just depends. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is your world building similar? Like, do you sit down and like type up a whole world building Bible that you refer to, or do you kind of put things in as you find you need them as you're going through the plot?
I wish I was the kind of person who could make like they call them book Bibles or world building
Yeah.
Bibles. Like I wish I was that person. Like it's so organized and like amazing. But no, it's like my whole process is like a Word document and just like dumping things into a Word document. So it's like there's world building stuff, there's like character stuff, there's setting stuff, there's like just like everything. And then I have to go and like separate it all out into like individual documents. So yeah, so a lot I do a ton of work up front, both like plotting and character work and like world building and magic system work. And then I don't, because I think some writers, and I used to be like this a long time ago, get caught up in that sort of planning and brainstorming, and then they never actually get to writing because it's like, oh, I haven't totally figured that out yet.
Right,
So I've definitely I've got a system where it's like, okay, I have enough that I can start to write, and then like as I hit like snags or as I need more, then I can like come away and like do a bit more brainstorming. Or, yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be a thing that's coming up with a lot of writers. Like eventually planning, becomes procrastinating. Like if you're not actually writing, and that seems to be a thing that comes up over and over again. Is like you got to just write, and at a certain point, like you got to stop planning because then you're just putting off the writing part of it.
Yes. And I suppose it depends on the author. Like I know I have friends who are just like total pantsers. So I'm curious, like if they were in this conversation, what they would say, how much planning they do. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also up to each person too, right? Like what the creative influence is and how like I'm a professional writer but not a fiction writer. Like I write speeches, right? So for me it's very planned. It's very like I'm pulling from a specific communications document and using specific key messages and writing and telling that story through this kind of like already established and approved stuff. And I feel like when I write fiction, I want the same thing, even if it doesn't always work, kind of thing, right? So I feel like it's such a personal thing, and I think that's why we love having authors on here and hearing so many different perspectives. Everyone always has a slightly different answer on how to approach it.
It reminds me, I did a program, like a ceramic program. I used to be a potter before I was a writer.
Oh,
before
I love ceramics.
Yeah, me too. This is my friend's actually.
Oh, nice.
So pretty.
I'm holding up a mug for the
for those who are
and
not
where can the audience buy said mug? It's a free plug.
Okay, yeah, I'll plug her. It's Shed Pottery, but she's in Canada, but she does do online sales. So SHED. Sorry, Shed.
Shed Pottery.
Yes. But okay, the thing I wanted to say though is I did this. It was a very short program for ceramics, and we would have a teacher. It was like 4 months, and we had a teacher every week or every 2 weeks. So we got like tons and tons of teachers in, and they would all say like, "This is the way you have to do it." And then the next teacher, it would be like, "Okay, this is the way we have to do it." And then the next teacher would come in and be like, "This is the way you have to do it," and it was totally different from like the way the. And so we were just kind of like, okay, actually, and that was the whole semester. Is like, okay. We can just pick. We can just decide for ourselves what works best for us. So that's kind of writing works.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to the term romantasy. There's something that I see a lot, and it annoys me. Is people kind of like discrediting romantasy as fantasy? They're like, oh well, it's romance with a cool setting. Blah, blah, blah.
That's always they've always done that.
I know,
Okay,
and it
but
drives
sorry,
me
go on. Yeah.
bonkers because I'm like, well, no, because like that's the human condition, right? Like humans, it doesn't matter if like it's a post-apocalyptic world with like dragons and radioactive frogs. Like people are going to fall in love, and people are going to have. That's like the human condition is to build relationships with other humans. So I'm kind of like curious as to if you faced any like challenges or barriers in your writing because of that.
I would say I think they were self-imposed in a lot of ways. Like I saw the like snobbery, or especially in fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think especially because for so long it was so male dominated, right? And so there was this snobbery of like that's women's fiction. That's women's fantasy, and like women are like we're basically like children. And like so we can just like be condescended to. Obviously not, right? That's not what this, and so I definitely internalized that. Like I know like with all of my books, so thinking of like my very first book, The Last Namsara, which is about this like dragon slayer princess. And there is a very strong romance arc in there, but even even all of the books after that, like I always wanted to put more romance in it, and I was always like clawing back, like kind of like stopping myself, pulling me back from doing that. And it was like this book, Heartless Hunter. It was like my I don't know if I can swear on here, but like my screw it book.
You can
like,
swear.
I do not care what anyone thinks about this book. And I kind of part of it me wonders is like I had a baby right before I started like actually writing this book, the Heartless Hunter. And I wonder if that was part of it too, because it's like you have no room to care, because it's like it's just like you're just like in survival mode. And I was like, I'm just gonna write the book I want to write, the book that I've always wanted to write. And that's what I did, and I didn't care, and I didn't hold back. And I was like, if somebody wants to like pull me back from the edge, fine, but I'm not gonna pull myself back from the edge. So yeah, and I mean, you see it, like it is just blowing up right now, romantically.
It is.
And so it's like, it's just like, I just feel like I wonder how much of that story of like I'm ashamed of this thing that I really love. And so I'm not gonna do it. How much of that is like maybe been in the water for a while, and then like all of a sudden the dam just broke or something, and like everyone is allowed to like love and champion these books. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's definitely true, like, romantasy has been exploding as a genre.
Yeah.
Like, it is. It's one of those things, where it's, like, crazy that nobody tapped into it before, and you're like, what were we doing?
I think, okay, I have a theory. I don't know if I'm right, but I wonder if it also coincides with, like, the rise of self-publishing, because self-published books, it is that, it's like, screw it, right? Like, nobody is going to buy this book, no publisher is going to, they've all said no, or whatever your reasons are. I'm just going to write what I want and put it up on Amazon or wherever. And the readers came, right? And so it's like, I wonder if that's what gave everyone permission, because it's like all of a sudden these books were doing so well.
I think it's also, here's me being a giant, massive dork as a communications scholar. It's the concept of the self-made content and having your own platform, right? Previously, who was in charge of publishing, who was in charge of what sold or what didn't sell, who was writing the reviews on books, right? It was men, mostly, especially in fantasy. So if that's not something they're interested in, it's not going to be covered in magazines, it's not going to be reviewed in newspapers, it's not going to be on the front part of the shelves in the bookstore, right? And now that there is suddenly this kind of like flip of who has control of the narrative with social media, with things like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these things, suddenly we have our own platforms, and we are able to platform these things and find each other and create these communities and find joy within each other and within this content and market it that way. And it's the same thing with self-publishing, as you pointed out, which I think is also a part of it, where it's no longer being gatekept by a select few. Right. And now that people are recognizing that, and I think it's now publishers are being like, oh my God, a lot of women and femme people like fantasy romance.
we can
make money off of it. Yeah, exactly. Sell. So like suddenly it's like happening, but it really feels like it was kind of like a grassroots, like, do you like this? I like this. Oh, let's talk about it. Let's create this thing together, and I'll publish it myself. I don't care. And go through that. And then now that, unfortunately, as we all suffer under the thumb of capitalism, people are realizing it makes money, and it's rocketing. So
yeah, that does make sense too. With like, I know like TikTok has been really like a big thing for books. Like if you go viral on TikTok, like your book can like massively, and a lot of people who are on Book Talk are young women, like, you know, people 16 to like early 20s talking about books. A lot of people who are interested in like romance genres and fantasy and stuff. And not to say that men can't be interested in those things, but it does tend to be female readers who champion those kinds of books and now have the like major platform to share those things, which is incredible. Which also, thank you for that question, Christiana, because it also reminded me of what my question was, which was I had been I'm interested in like the tropes in genre is something that we talk about and is really interesting, and sort of, you know, destigmatizing tropes, because this trope is just a story block. It's not something that's like bad or good. But romance, I think, especially has a lot of those like very prominent tropes, like in this book, enemies to lovers and that sort of thing. Were those things that you specifically picked because you were interested in them, or did you kind of write the story and then afterwards you picked out, you're like, oh, this is an enemies to lovers, or this is that sort of thing?
It's weird because, yeah, okay. So this is a good question. I love talking about tropes. I did not think like, oh, I want enemies to lovers. I want witches and witch hunters. I want, what else is in there? There's a million things. Like not real, like love triangle. We'll put that in scare
Yeah.
quotes. Blood magic, hard magic systems. All of these things. I didn't set out to be like, okay, these are the tropes I want in here. I have tried to do that for other books, and I just find that it doesn't work for me. Like, I can't sit down and be like, I want this, 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 and this. It has to come organically from the story. Just for me, I don't know why. Like, I kind of like get blocked the other way. But yeah, it's funny. Like, I read, actually, I'm gonna plug another book. It's an indie author. Theodora. Oh my gosh, I forget her last name. But it's called Universal Fantasy. And if you just type Universal Fantasy into Google, it should come up. And it's not tropes. She calls them Universal Fantasies. They're like basically like a sub. Am I telling you something you already know? No. Okay.
No.
So it's like, she describes them as like a subcategory of a trope. So for example, like a universal fantasy could be like you something that happens a lot in like, or it used to happen a lot in YA, but even in like more popular ways, it's like girl gets a makeover, and like the makeover doesn't have to be like
suddenly
makeup and
she's
ball.
hot. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like there's something about that. There's something there that we like, that we crave, and so it's like it doesn't have to be like fancy dress, fancy makeup, fancy hair, but like a makeover could be like she goes from having no magic to like becoming like a powerful magic user at the end, or like and so like found family would be, I don't know if that would be a trope or subcategory, but something like, I was just going through some this morning, like an ally who turns out to be an enemy. That wouldn't be a trope per se, but it's like that like lower level, or enemies who become allies. That's another, especially in fantasy. Yeah, and so I was just going, anyways, so I read this book and I was like, this is so fascinating. And so I just went through, for each of my books, I just listed all of the things I could. And I just found like Heartless Hunter just had like 3 times as many as my other books. I was like, I didn't plan that. It just kind of happened. And so, yeah, I guess that's my answer. I don't plan it. It just happens.
That's very cool. I just looked at the book. So it's Universal Fantasy, Theodora Taylor.
Theodora Taylor.
Which sounds fascinating, and I think I'm gonna like check out of the library immediately, because just like talking about like tropes and the approach of either, because I think that's also something that's come up with other people we've talked to, is the idea of like writing your story and the tropes kind of emerge, or the themes that you're interested in emerge as you write, as opposed to, and then maybe in subsequent passes you pull them out a little bit more once you're aware of it and you like highlight them. But we haven't really talked to anybody who's been like, no, hard and fast, like I want to write like this trope and then this trope and then this trope. They just kind of
which
emerge
I would
naturally.
say also isn't necessarily the wrong approach, especially in like romantasy. I think that's something that you see a lot of writers concerned about. It's if something is too similar, and I'm like, guess what? Unless you were the author of the story of Gilgamesh, like you're nothing's particularly original.
Nothing.
And especially in fantasy and sci-fi and romance, people are specifically looking for those similarities, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something that freaks a lot of writers out, when I'm like, no, it's actually something you can kind of like lean into. Like, if you want to write an enemies to lovers story, people are actively looking for that. So
yeah, and that's genre fiction in general. Like mystery has that, right? They have all mystery. I'm not a mystery reader, but mystery readers is like, oh, you have a dead body at the beginning. Okay, I'm in. Like, there's just like all these things that are not my thing. They're not fantasy or romance things. But yeah, it's
Yeah, it's like, I think of it kind of as like, it's like a flavor. Like, it's like, if you like garlic, you're going to want dishes with garlic in it. Like, you're never going to be like, maybe if you just had garlic, but you're never going to be like, I've had enough garlic in my life, I'm never going to have, like, like you want it. Like a trope is a flavor that people enjoy, and
that's
are
a great way of describing
it.
Yeah.
Put as much flavoring in your books as you want. People like it. Not everybody. That's why there's different genres and people seek out different things, but you'll have an audience for whatever.
Yeah. And okay, sorry, to go back to the universal fantasy idea. So maybe you've talked about this on your podcast before, but Jennifer Lynn Barnes, she gave a lecture. I think it was at a Romance Writers of America conference. It's a couple years old now, and it's a very similar concept to what Theodora Taylor is talking about. I forget what she calls them, but it's the same sort of thing. It's like tapping into like our psyches, and our psychology. It's like, what are the things that we have kind of evolved to want, and then and so it's a very similar concept. So I read that book, and then I listened to that lecture around the same time, and I was like, oh, this is so fascinating. So yeah, both of those things I highly recommend if you're interested.
Those sound like, we'll make sure to put those in the notes of the show. Those sound like great resources for sure.
Hello, world builders. Allison here. Did you know that the World Builders Tavern has a free Discord community for sci-fi and fantasy writers? Join to get encouragement for that novel that you're working on, to participate in the monthly flash fiction challenges, and of course, to geek out about world building. Link in the show notes.
All right, so I think we are at time for where we would normally do our proprietor's plug, where Allie talks about a book similar to something we've been talking about, like if you enjoyed this, you might enjoy this. But instead, when we have authors here, we like to let you plug either a previous work of yours, or if you have something that you're working on that you can tell us as much as you're able to under secrecy and privacy and all of that. But what's next for you, or what have you written before that you think listeners might also enjoy reading if they like this book?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, okay. So I'm like finishing up the sequel. Like the sequel's written, sequel to Heartless Hunter. I don't know if I can announce the title. I'm not going to say the title because I don't know if I'm allowed. I really like it, but yeah. So that is like, we're in the line in it. So it's basically done. And I don't know when that one comes out. If it'll be a year or if it'll be less than a year, I'm not sure.
Very exciting.
But my next one, which I'm writing it's not contracted yet. We haven't submitted it to my editor yet, but I'm revising it. It is I'm trying again, an adult romantasy. So hopefully they don't age me down again. But if they do, that's okay. It's like it's a marriage of convenience between like two
another trope
enemies.
that I love.
Oh. Yeah, and anyway, so they're both, she's cursed and in order, I haven't even talked about this book. I'll just tell you. She's cursed, and the only way to break her curse, because she basically, at the beginning, this is before the book opens, she has declared she's never going to marry, because she's going to like be focused on her career, which is like this powerful magic user. And then her grandmother's like her mentor and the person she admires. Her rival hears this girl announce this, and then she curses her and takes her magic and says, if you don't marry by your 23rd birthday, something like that, your magic is gone forever. So she's already lost her magic. It'll be gone forever if she doesn't marry. And so now she has to find someone, but nobody wants to marry her because she's cursed. Anyway, so this guy is also desperate, and so they're like, okay, let's just do this. But yeah, they're enemies. They're like they come from enemy. They come from enemy nations.
I love everything about that. I love that awesome. Like forced closeness and everything.
Yeah.
Yes, forced.
I'm a sucker for it. Yeah.
Oh well, hopefully that your editor likes it, because we will be eagerly awaiting
that
one. That sounds fantastic.
I expect an email as soon as it's approved.
Okay. Yeah, if you need beta readers,
yeah.
I will. So I should move on to our next segment, but I remembered one more question that actually Allie had brought up that I want to quickly ask, which is, this book has a different title in the US versus international versions. Can you tell us anything about that? Just thought it's interesting how that happened. So was that something that you were involved in, or was that just a publisher thing that they told you, we're naming it different things?
This is my most asked question, and I'm so sorry that it confuses people. It was not my decision, really. I guess I gave them permission, so I guess maybe I am the buck stops with me. But so originally the book was titled The Crimson Moth, because of her Crimson Moth signature and because of the allusion to the Scarlet Pimpernel. Crimson Moth.
Yep.
And this is funny because it happened with my first series too, where I had a title, and then like like outside of North America stuck with that title, but then my American publisher changed it. And so that's what happened with this one. So, and I I agree. So the Crimson Moth, it doesn't really tell you, like when you hear the Crimson Moth,
what's
you
happening.
don't necessarily think romantasy or fantasy or witches or anything like that. Or witch hunter. And so my editor was like, we need to nail this a little better. So Heartless Hunter is what we decided.
Interesting.
It just kind of gives you more of a taste of what's going on. But the Brits were like, we really love this title. We already came up with a tagline. And the tagline is a moth to flame, a witch to burn, which does sound pretty badass.
Oh, that's good.
And so they just kept it. And then, so now everyone is confused. But the Crimson Moth and Heartless Hunter are the same book. They just have different titles and different covers.
And will that cause more confusion? Because I know that, so I believe then the series in the US is called the Crimson Moth series. Is it also called the Crimson Moth series in the UK and just the Crimson Moth is the first one? Or does it have a different series title?
I believe it's the same. I believe it's the same. And the reason that the US did that is because they wanted to like make it clear that the UK, that they wanted to try and the connection.
Interesting. There. It's always fun to see the sort of publishing machinations and the gritty behind the art and how it gets out into the world. Thank you. Well, so now for our final segment, it's closing time, and this is when we leave our listeners with little nuggets of a single either line of advice or question that they can ask themselves when world building. So, Kristen, if there is one thing that you could give to an aspiring author or a current author about world building, what would you recommend they do, or what should they ask themselves when they're building a world?
I would say, I guess I would say, like, think about limits, like hard limits. So, like, you should be trying. Okay, so with a magic system, for example, you should be trying to back yourself in a corner, kind of, so that you can figure out how to get out. With the magic system in this one, it's like I wanted there to be limits, consequences, yes, okay, but like limits too. So it's like these are the rules, and you cannot break the rules. And that I feel like that can apply to more than just magic systems. But I'm a big fan of drawing lines and like not being able to cross them, because it makes things more specific. It raises the stakes. It gives more conflict. You have to it's kind of a fun challenge to you too. Like you have to figure out how you're going to get around these walls that you built.
Very cool. I love that. Christiana, did you have something either inspired from the book or the conversation that you'd like to leave our listeners with about world building?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the discussion of tropes, and that don't shy away from them.
No, you're stealing my question.
No. Don't use them as a crutch. Like you don't want to just churn out a bunch of tropes for no reason. But also don't freak yourself out. If you feel like it's been told before, I guarantee you anything you write has been, if you break things down enough, like you can compare Star Wars to any movie because it follows the hero trope, but Star Wars is so unique because of the world building, right? So don't worry too much about the tropes. Focus on what makes that trope unique and the world that it exists in. It's not that it's enemies to lovers, it's that it's enemies to lovers in a kind of almost Victorian with witches kind of world. That's what makes it unique and interesting, right? So I
think Regency is the name for that time period. The Regency, Bridgerton. I think it's Regency, which is I love it. It's so romantic, and that Regency is also definitely having a big moment right now. I think I feel like people are really into it. And then I was thinking about I love that you talked about the kind of the snapshot that inspired it of the having the beautiful scars as being a symbol of power, and that's also kind of a way that I like to write or world build is I just like to write about things that I think are cool or fun, and I feel like that's kind of a nice way to world build. Is sometimes people get really tied up in oh well, what will sell or what do people want to read or what is a prestigious thing to write about. It's just write the story that you want. If you think something is cool, literally for my last, I'm currently in the process of a second draft of a novel, and when I was coming up with it, I sat down and I made a list of what are some things that I like. Oh, I like this. I like this. I like this. Cool, can I make a story out of that? And then it was really fun to write, and I had a much easier time writing it than stories in the past, where I've tried to be here's a grand theme that I want to talk about in my writing. So If
That's
you're
great
stuck on
advice.
world building, yeah, just like write a list of things you like, write
Yeah.
something that's cool. And chances are, either you can write it for your own enjoyment, or if you want to get it published and get it read, there are chances that if you like it, somebody else is also going to like it. Like,
I was just gonna say,
nobody's that unique.
if you are having fun with something, there's a high likelihood that someone else out there will have fun with it too.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, so unfortunately, this is now closing time. We'd love to stay longer, but we have dusty rugs to shake out here at the tavern. So thank you so much, Kristen, for talking with us today. This has been awesome. It was a great conversation.
Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you. Thank you also to our listeners for joining us at the tavern. If you can't bear the thought of waiting 2 whole weeks for another episode, you should join us on Patreon, patreon.com/worldbuilderstavern for access to our bonus after-hour shows. You can connect with the tavern on Twitter at WBTavernPod, TikTok at World Builders Tavern, and Discord, which is the World Builders Tavern. Kristen, where can listeners find you on the internet if you want to be found?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, just Kristen Ciccarelli. I have a Substack, Kristen Ciccarelli. I have a website, KristenCiccarelli.com. Yeah, any of those.
All very uniform. That's so easy to find. That's great.
Yeah.
Also, there was plug the name of the pottery company one more time.
Shed. SHED. Shed.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Shed Ceramics. Also, we also have plugged today the Universal Fantasy by Theodora Taylor, as well as there was a talk by Jennifer Lynn
Barnes. Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Yeah.
So check those out. We'll put all of those in the notes that you guys can find them. And of course, read Heartless Hunter, which if you are listening to this episode right when it comes out, the book will have come out yesterday, February 20th, 2024. And we enjoyed reading it. And if you like YA fantasy and enemies to lovers and really cool world building systems that don't have plot holes in their blood magic, you should definitely read this book. Until next time, scram, everybody.
Get out of here.
Bye.